How did I go from this to this? A misplaced confidence in my technical ability within Blender, and obviously a whole lot of procrastination. Stick around if you want to see what I've actually done in the past 4 months. So I realised very quickly, with a cat that had actual arms and everything else, and you can see behind the scenes here, the complexity of having a character rig with actual arms, legs, tail, everything else, and the other challenges that come with having things like movable mouths and all this kind of stuff. So I think this was the point at which I realised I'd probably bitten off more than I could chew. And with that came the decision to completely revamp the character into something new and much more simple when it came to actually animating things. So I did a game jam back in October time, and the character here, I liked the aesthetic more. Though the original animation was based on an old webcomic I did in, blimey, 2000 or something. For my first animation in a long time, I thought I'd keep it simpler, having struggled with that rig. So this was my inspiration. This is where the character for the new animations came from. Because it's pixel art, it's by its nature quite blocky and square, so I kind of like that aesthetic. So yeah, what am I saying? This is what I went with. So I started modelling him out in 3D basically. So if I go to Blender, I'll show you. So you can see here, I started with a much simpler character design. And instead of going for the low poly thing, which was kind of what I thought was my style, I decided to go for a sub D thing instead, which is basically, if you don't know what sub D is, essentially you still build a low poly model, but then what you do, you apply a modifier, which then sort of, if I just do it in this mode, it smooths all the vertices and adds more detail, kind of smooths it out. And what that does, it creates like almost like a claymation style effect, where the sort of blobby outlines give it this kind of plasticine look. So that's what I did. Sorry about the mouse clicking, I keep forgetting about that. Yeah, so the rig, if I just spin it on a bit. The rigging is pretty much the same, the animation. You've still got like a look target so you can move his eyes around and stuff. I don't think I can shrink and grow the eyes. The eyebrows, I haven't done it on this one, but I started learning shape keys, so his eyebrows and everything move. But in this one, this was like version 1. So we just play that. Very, very simple. So yeah, obviously keeping things simple, I decided to model an entire house to scale with every single detail, down to like the garage and everything else, the interior of the house, simplicity and everything else. Every single light socket, light fixtures, an entire kitchen. I'm skipping ahead a bit though, because first of all, I did actually get a near complete animation with this first version of the cat, which I learned a lot of stuff from, especially around the timings and everything of things like filling the kettle and stuff, and really working on the fundamentals of the actual animation. So using things like squash and stretch and really giving it a lot more personality to the movement. Taking my cues from, what's the Pixar guy called? Inspired by seeing how Alex Snow works, trying to act out the animation so the timing feels right and feel more natural than perhaps just doing it on the computer and letting the animation keys do their thing. Being a fan of the way Southern Shotty does his animations in Blender, creates like a tangible, real-world feel to it, like traditional stop motion. But also, in a smaller way, to try and tie this back to the video I did last year, which was a 3D homage to the Bongo Cat, which was my first video to really kind of get more than 30 views, so... which when I look at it now, I can see I have improved somewhat. One thing about reviewing your old work is you do see improvement. While there is an element of cringe looking at your old stuff, it's good to see that if you didn't cringe, then that would mean you're not growing, I suppose. So while, you know, it was my first video to get more than like 100 views, I think I could probably do better now in terms of the actual technical side of things and not make silly mistakes like forgetting to animate whole sections of the video. As a quick diversion, I decided to make a completely different cat video using an old song that I had remastered, and using a feature of Blender where you can basically import sounds, in this case every single stem of the track, so there's a drum track, a bass track, a singing track and so on, and then use that sound from that audio file to then control movement, so whether that be rotation or whatever scaling. I made the whole animation here completely procedural. I think this was the first step in trying to get something simple animated, with most of the animation being handled by the drivers here. All I had to really do was like pose the cat and make it look around and stuff and swing in time to the music, really. So that was quite quick to animate, and this did help with, again, learning the timings and everything else with the main video, in that what I was doing here was mostly trying to time things along with the music and getting the movements and everything more sort of natural. You can go watch that on my channel and maybe get it above 100 views, which would be really cool. So I haven't got to a stage where it was almost done and I was about to release it in time for the new year and hitting my milestone of 600 subscribers. I took a bit of a detour and thought I'd spend 2 weeks animating and modelling a Lotus Esprit for some reason. I don't know why. I think because it was on my desk, I decided to start modelling this and do a whole animation with the cat and the Lotus and my sort of logo thing in a little scene to then celebrate 600 subscribers. So that naturally led to reconsidering the whole scope of the animation, to then think, should I include an entire driving sequence and all kinds of stuff, which I'm still in two minds about, because that again requires learning how to rig wheels and all that kind of stuff in Blender, which is way more technical than anything I've been doing before, which is mostly just keyframing stuff. When you're actually having to rig wheels to work so they spin correctly when you move a vehicle and stuff, that becomes more challenging. The logical next step then, rather than trying to figure it out in Blender, I decided to use the Unity engine instead and use physically simulated car behavior to actually have a drivable game object and somehow script and record the scene in Unity instead. But before I did that, I had to model a new car because testing it with the Lotus Esprit was too complicated, so I thought I'd build a simple box car. And I ended up spending more time modelling the test car than I did actually making the actual Lotus Esprit, which is ludicrous. And because I couldn't help myself, I decided to model a full cat driver for the car. And actually, I think in reality, this whole thing has more polygons, more detail, more time got into it than the actual original car I just wanted to animate. But this is a consequence of having no impulse control and just going with where the dopamine is. So I modelled a full cat and everything. How much work is left to do? There's probably 2 or 3 weeks of, I guess, finishing off the ending. The challenge is trying to accept that it's done and good enough and not trying to redo it again, because this is now the 3rd time I've remade the animation, and I'm never going to get anything released unless I just say, okay, that will do, and get it out there. I can do something I don't care about at all, like the tuna chunks video. That was really quick, just throw it out there, and then as soon as I expend slightly more effort, then I get really perfectionist and think, oh, it's never going to be good enough. It's not going to live up to how I see it in my head. But I'm going to do my best to try and not do that and just put something out. So if I say by March I should have something finished and published, then yeah, there's so much stuff now. I mean, there's it's such a complicated scene now. What started out as I was gonna just model things as a cube and a cat and I was gonna make it very, very minimalist. But now down to even modeling the things inside the cupboards and making everything interactable from the is interactable. I mean, down to things like door handles. I don't think it looks too bad. I've obviously gone to town on modelling the kettle now, and adding a lot more detail. And his eyes have changed colour. But yeah, I'll probably just show you quickly the one thing I was technically impressed with myself for figuring out was the shape keys. So previously with the old model, I had almost like a sort of mechanical sort of puppet-like mouth, almost like a like a wooden sort of just open close kind of thing. But now what I've got is basically shape keys. So what I can do, I can morph the shape of his mouth based on these different sort of shape targets and stuff. So what that means is I can do quite natural kind of poses, and then the eyes as well. I think they've come out better than I expected them to. The actual pupils, this is using they're mapped onto the eyeball. So these are again quite simple polygon models that are then upscaled, detail added. Oh, and one more thing, I suppose, yeah, is the textured effect. So it looks, when you render it out, it looks they look a bit like plastic toys, I guess. They're not like claymation, but it doesn't look completely, at least I don't think it looks totally CG looking, I suppose, if I just render out a scene. Because you've got depth of field and you've got a bit of texture and stuff, it looks alright, I guess. I think we're almost at the end now. So what I wanted to do was, in the scene, he lays back on the floor and just basically like resigns himself to his fate, and then has this kind of fever dream of being on a giant coffee jar. And then Wile E. Coyote style, pulling out a little umbrella, and then it rains coffee beans. And this, I can't explain the amount of time it took to calculate these beans, which you don't really see anyway. I don't think you can really appreciate that there's several thousand coffee beans being physically simulated hitting off this little umbrella. But that's pretty much it. So I'll leave it here. I'm going to play the video as it is, and you can tell me if it's worth finishing or not. I'm out of coffee, got no granules, this gets me down. I stare at the cup, just boiling water. The future's bleak and empty now.